Annie, I'm especially glad to see you. And you're right. I have the same issues with internet. It must be the area we live in, maybe. I don't know. I appreciate everyone taking the time to be here, and I am especially gratified to see our new representative, Andy, here today in his brand new role. And we are all very excited, I think, to have someone engaged at the Capitol who understands so well what we do here at PPACG and the cogs around how important.
We're losing you, Jill.
No, you're losing me. There's a lot of noise, but it's not me. It sounds very windy.
Yeah.
It's not me. Can you hear me?
I
You're
think it's
fading in and out.
really hard to drive and hit mute. So
Yeah,
maybe
everyone
somebody's
who's
in the
not
car.
talking, go on mute, please, just briefly. And I'm not sure to whom I should be handing it back to. Is it Jessica? Jessica, would you, or how are we going to proceed?
So I'm gonna, Jill or Andy Gunning, would one of you guys, so the thoughts was, you've done a great job of saying hello and everything. Now, we just kind of would like to summarize what PPACG programs are and what we do for the folks who might not know us as well.
I'm trying to see who's on this call.
And
Do we have everybody introduce themselves?
yeah, and Jill, on the agenda, it does ask for making sure we've got a representative from each of the jurisdictions. So maybe Jessica can help you with that, but it'd be great for our elected representatives to know that we've got Park County, El Paso County, Manitou Springs and so forth and so on the line.
Yeah, I am assuming we do. I'm looking at this list now. And I even see Director Lou from CDOT on the call. So if she's there, welcome. And Andy, if you want to talk, well, I don't know if we do want to do introductions, but yeah, Andy Gunning, the Executive Director, is probably best to talk about our programs, and then Dick is probably best to talk about our legislative agenda.
Sure, I'm happy to say a few words about PPACG, who we are. Why don't we try to do introductions first, especially we'll start with our jurisdictional members that are part of PPACG. Why don't we start in Park County, go to Teller County, then into El Paso County and our local jurisdictions. And then I know Stan and Dick are going to give an overview of our PPACG adopted themes by the PPACG board. But why don't we start in Park County and introduce, and then we'll work our way down.
Park County is always the best place to start. Dick Elsner, Park County Commissioner, Secretary PPACG, and co-chair of our legislative committee.
Thank you, Dick.
Super. We have Teller County representatives on the line, Norm and Eric. They may be looking for mute. I know current Commissioner Norm Steen is on the line with us. He'll be with us here for another week or so. And then I see Commissioner-elect Eric Stone has joined us as well. You want to say a few words, introduce yourself? There you are, but safely if you're driving.
Hello, Stone, Teller County Commissioner-elect for District 3. And I am driving, but I won't be for long. I'll be getting back to the home office here in a second, but want to make sure I didn't miss anything really critical at the early part of the call. So hello, everyone, and look forward to working with you in the coming years.
Super, very good. And then El Paso County commissioners want to introduce yourselves, then we'll do the jurisdictions within El Paso.
Go ahead, Holly.
I'm Commissioner Holly Williams from Northern El Paso County.
And I'm Stan Vanderwerf from Western El Paso County, and also Vice Chair of PPACG and co-chair of the Legislative Committee with Dick Elsner.
Okay, very good. And some of our jurisdictions are on the line as well. Why don't we start up north and move south? Town of Monument, Mayor Wilson.
Don Wilson, Mayor of Monument.
Super. I don't think we have anybody from Palmer Lake on the line. I don't see anybody. How about City of Colorado Springs? And we'll go to Manitou Springs.
Well, I'm Jill Gabler. I am the outgoing chair of PPACG right now. And again, welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yolanda Avila, City Council, Colorado Springs, District 4, Southeast.
Very good. And City of Manitou Springs, I know is represented. Then we'll move to City of Fountain.
Yeah. Hi, I'm John Graham, Mayor, Manitou Springs. Happy New Year.
Very good. City of Fountain, I know that Sharon's on the line.
Yeah, Sharon Thompson, Fountain City Council, and second vice chair right now at PPACG. And this is exciting. Get started again.
And I'm Tamara Estes, and I'm on Fountain City Council and the alternate for the City of Fountain to PPACG. So.
Super, very good. Did we miss anybody as far as PPACG board members and representatives? I didn't see anybody from Green Mountain Falls and some of our other outlying jurisdictions.
Yeah, any of this, Norm Steenick, I just want to make sure I was properly unmuted. Hello, everybody. Norm Steenick from Teller County.
Okay, super. And just real briefly, after I give a quick recap, Stan Vanderwerf and Dick Elsner are going to talk about our legislative policy themes that have been adopted. Then after that, well, why don't we do introductions then of all the representatives and senators that we have on the line, including, in addition, also our executive director from CDOT. We asked Shoshana Liu to be here as well. She offered to come and talk about what's happening statewide as far as transportation funding as well. So we took her up on that opportunity. We do a lot more than transportation here, but since that is central to a lot of the conversations we have, especially with our legislative committee, we thought that would be pretty important. Then also we'll give you a chance to meet our new transportation commissioner that represents our region as well. I see that Lisa Hickey is on the line. So maybe after we do the legislative themes by Stan and Dick, we'll go around and do introductions of all the other representatives if that's good. So just super briefly with PPACG, as many of you know, we serve a 3-county region with El Paso, Teller, and Park counties, and the 13 cities and towns within those 3 counties. The 4 main program areas that we have that we'll talk about today are transportation. You'll hear a lot about that. And obviously that's one of our central focus points, especially within the urbanized area within our region. We also serve as the Area Agency on Aging, or the AAA. So we coordinate senior services across the entire 3-county region, which has especially been critical here getting through the pandemic over the past almost year now. But just trying to do what we can to help our seniors survive in this environment. Third program area is our joint land use planning program, which coordinates planning around our military bases, our 4 main military installations in the region. And then our 4th program is environmental planning with air quality and water quality, which has become a little bit more acute as well with wildfire issues that we've seen across the state that's impacting our air and our water much more severely here more recently. So that's just a quick 30,000 view of what we do here at PPACG. We have a number of staff members on here, and I'm not going to go through and do all the introductions, but I can send out our contact info so you have that at the ready. But we've got really good subject matter experts in transportation, in environmental planning, and in aging services. And we're here to help out in any way we can. We're here as a resource if you need us to answer questions or potentially to testify and coordinate with our board on various issues. That's what we're here for. So with that, let me pass it over to Commissioner Vanderwerf and Commissioner Elsner, and they're going to kind of walk through our legislative themes.
Hey, thank you. This is Dick Elsner, Park County Commissioner. I'm going to do the first part of it, and then Stan will do the second part. You know, one of the big things for us are what we call our overarching themes, which is support local control. You know, we're the ones on the ground. We're the ones dealing with everybody. We hear things a lot sooner than the state does, and we really want any legislation that you think of or are looking at, understand that we really feel that local control is probably the best way to deliver the most effective programs. We oppose unfunded mandates. Those are something that is easy to do. The legislature can pass things because it's a program that is a good program, but then when they put the the funding back on counties and municipalities, it becomes a real problem because our revenue is just as tight, if not tighter, than the states. And then we do support legislation to address any redundant or unnecessary regulations. That is, remove some of the regulations that might be out there that can streamline programs and make it a lot easier for us to accomplish what we need to do. One of the things that we're really looking for help from the state legislature and of course the governor's office's support for pandemic recovery. We want to make sure we have a good plan for deployment of vaccines that is fair and equitable to all parts of Colorado. We want to assist and support. We want assistance and support for our senior citizens. I mean, we have a lot of issues because of the COVID and everything being locked down. That especially in the rural parts of the state, in rural parts of PPACG and in Park County, where our seniors are becoming more and more isolated, and that does really cause a problem. We've had some really good assistance here lately with some food boxes that we were able to distribute, but we need help there. Expanding testing capabilities. It's really good to have all those capabilities in the metro areas, but you get into rural Colorado and, our feet are held to the same requirements as far as percentages of what is it? Anyway, the people that have COVID, but we don't have the testing. So what generally happens to us is our percentage is high because people just don't stop by because they think they might have it. They actually are sick when they go get tested. And then support economic recovery. That is, make sure that we have some tools available for the small business development centers and workforce centers to make sure that we can get people back to work, because that's one of our biggest goals, is to try to get everybody back to work as quickly as possible so we don't have to continue supporting them. Protecting and enhancing services for seniors in the region. We want legislation that expands federal, state, regional, or local revenues available to fund the needs of seniors. We do have a lot of very specific needs in our area for transportation, trying to get seniors over to the doctor, that type of thing. That there's always a discussion of, well, do you go to senior centers or do you to have people age in place? Most seniors would rather age in place, and when you get down to it, that is a lot less expensive route. We want increased funding again for transportation for older adults and persons with disabilities. And we support increases in the quality of care and consumer protections for older adults and their caregivers. We need to make sure that the people giving the care to the seniors get what they need, and also to protect the seniors from some of the predatory practices that are out there. And that is the first part, and Stan, you can do the next.
Yes, thank you, Dick. And I'll go ahead and continue through the list. Hopefully everybody's got the list in front of them. It is on the screen as well. Excuse me. I just want to emphasize a couple of things that Dick mentioned, then go into the remaining items. This first one is unfunded mandates, and I really look forward to continuing to work with our current and our new legislators. Our delegation that comes from this area comes from our 3 counties. If you ever have any questions about what kinds of fiscal impacts you might have on a proposed piece of legislation, given that you come to us early enough, I can tell you, certainly, at least for El Paso County, our staff would be willing to kind of do a back of the napkin assessment about what kind of impacts that may have. That might actually be very helpful to you as legislators to ensure that you are not delivering something inadvertently that is harmful to one of the counties here. In the last 4 years that I've been county commissioner, we've had it's been maybe about $15 million in unfunded mandates in the initial proposed legislation. And that's half of our entire transportation budget for El Paso County. We've been able to negotiate that into different places to much less expense, and we're thankful to our legislators for listening to us about those things. But it can really harm us on really small numbers and prevent us from delivering the other services that we need to deliver at a local level. I'll also make one other comment with regarding to supporting pandemic recovery. We all know in 2021, let's be hopeful the vaccine will be very, very successful, and we'll have another big task before us in 21, and that is getting our small businesses back into a healthy environment, and also getting our workforce back into shape. So any assistance that our legislators would be willing to provide in supporting our small business development centers and our workforce centers would be greatly appreciated. I do want to mention specifically that the state has been helpful in both of those areas already. So my thanks already for that support. We are talking about something over and above that, because the sooner we get our small businesses back into shape and our people back to work, then our own tax base is improved and we can get ourselves back to normal much more quickly. So I consider those two investment areas to be really, really important in 2021. Okay, going on then now through protecting and enhancing transportation throughout the region. I can say, and I say this very specifically, and first of all, I appreciate Shoshana being on the line. We have a great working relationship with CDOT. It doesn't mean we always see eye to eye, but we do have that relationship. So any legislation that can support revenues to fund transportation infrastructure in our community would be exceptionally helpful. It may be obvious to all of our delegation here, but in the next 30 years, we're expected to grow to well over 1 million in population. I think the number is 1.2 million, and that's not quite doubling in El Paso County, but that's almost doubling. And then we also have a lot of growth in Teller County, and Park County has growth challenges as well. And of course, in our rural counties, those roads are used by everybody. So supporting those rural roads is also very helpful for people on the Front Range. And we're interested in support for our regional air passenger service and our cargo connectivities. We've got Amazon coming into Colorado Springs now. Southwest Airlines, you know, is now going to be doing a lot more offerings at our Colorado Springs Airport. And that, plus a whole bunch of other potential initiatives, speaks very strongly to what we believe is a need to increase our multimodal transportation connectivity. And actually, one very interesting point that's been brought to my attention, and Norm Steen might be willing to talk about this for a minute. One of the great ways to reduce burdens on our road transportation infrastructure is broadband. We now see a whole bunch of value because of coronavirus about more remote kind of working. So legislature to improve rural and actually even in some places urban broadband would be, I think, very serious conversations we'd be willing to have with our legislators. I think that can help to take some of the pressure off of our actual road infrastructure. We're also interested in supporting efforts to improve safety in these transportation modes, transit riders, pedestrians, bicycle infrastructure, those kinds of things, speaking again to the multimodal and safety components of those. And another requirement that I think is very important to me is aggregate productivity. In other words, designing systems that literally have the capacity to reduce wait times so that our citizens can be productive. And so that also includes efforts to improve safe and reliable flow of people and goods. Goods are also very important on that in that arena. And we will, if we see going forward reduction in transportation funding in our region, you know, we will be working on opposition to that. Supporting air and water quality, a huge concern for anybody on the Front Range, a big concern across Colorado. But it's also a big concern in El Paso County with a large population as we have. Fortunately, we've been very good about air quality, and we're doing a lot of work on improving our water quality. With regard to air quality, the only requirement that we've come close to, I think occasionally, but rarely we've gone over our limit, is in ozone. And we now have within PPACG a lot of strategic planning and hired staff that's working on air and water quality within our region. And we're doing our job in that arena. So legislation that supports those would be interesting to us. And then any regulatory burdens on small communities, that translates into dollars that these small communities just simply might not have available. And it's very important that we pay a lot of attention to making sure we don't create some kind of secondary effect that's a regulatory burden that really actually prevents our smaller communities from doing some of the other things that they must do. Next is supporting and protecting our military partners. And so we're interested in legislation that provides additional support to our veterans, to our families, our active duty members, and the military facilities that we have here. Everybody on this telecom knows how important the military is to our region economically. And I'm very thankful to the state and to CDOT in particular for some of the work that they've been doing to improve our roads out to Schriever Air Force Base. So we are working together as a partner. So this is really about, can we take this to the next level and the next step to support our military partners and our veterans? And there are some challenges in that arena that I'm sure we'll get into further in our conversation here. Also, support to our efforts to attract and expand our military operations. Obviously, the Space Force is the big gorilla in this case. I know the state, and in particular, the governor has been highly supportive of capturing this for the Colorado Springs region. We appreciate that deeply. And any legislation that reduces or damages our attractiveness to our military partners in the region is something that we'll take a serious look at and potentially oppose. And then regional quality of life, support that addresses funding to support our local governments that can improve our quality of life, whatever that might be. It can be a broad variety of things. We would deeply appreciate that. And to support regional issues as they pertain to PPACG legislative themes. As you know, we have a legislative committee, and that committee does interact through our lobbyist. We have a lobbyist, and that committee interacts through our lobbyists to you, our legislators, and gives you input and suggestions when we feel like we're interested in supporting a piece of legislation or opposing that. And we would be thrilled for opportunities to give you suggestions that we think might be really beneficial and helpful in that legislation. So at the end of this, I just want to make sure our legislators know we do continue to remain open and willing to work with you and give you those ideas and suggestions going forward. But it will also mean if there's a piece of legislation that we think is going to be harmful to our community, you will also be hearing from us on that. So that's everything. Dick, did you have a few more words to close up on the list?
Well, not a lot of words. One thing that when you get into the quality, regional quality, and those issues, we've spent a lot of time in Park County trying to work with CPACG, CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to have a very sensible, we're going to charge people to use some of the facilities and give that back to the county, because I know all of our counties have a lot of state parks, and yet the counties themselves are the ones that bear the cost of supporting these parks. So, just along that line, water is going to become a very important issue with the ongoing drought and the scarcity of water. And I think the legislature needs to take a look at preserving some of the water that we currently have in our counties that seems to be heading in other directions and not meant for what it was originally used or needed. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dick. I think obviously this will open up and we'll have a broader discussion going forward, but there are some more items on the agenda. And Jill, we hand this back to you. It looks like the next item is to be moderated by Jessica, and starting with letting Shoshana Liu talk a little bit about some of her legislation that she's considering for infrastructure and transportation.
So I'm going to interrupt real quick. What we're going to do right now is we're going to do a quick round of introductions of our legislators who are on the line. I'm going to say your name and title and just ask you to say hello and tell us where you serve. And then once you've done that, we're going to hand it over to Shoshana to give us that quick conversation. I'm going to do this in the order you're showing up on my screens, so please forgive me if this comes across as a little bit disordered. Representative Mary Bradfield?
Not ready. Yeah. I'm glad to be here. Thank you. I represent House District 21, which is the southern part of El Paso County, not including any of Colorado Springs, Fountain, and Whitefield, and Security are the big housing areas. Thank you.
Representative Mark Baisley?
Hello, yes, thank you. Thrilled to be with all of you today. I represent, as far as anyone cares here, all of Teller County. So I'm thrilled and honored to represent Teller County. I also represent most of the territory of Douglas County as well.
Thank you. Representative Shane Sandridge?
Yes, thank you for having me today. I represent House District 14. I am a member of the House Business Committee, as well as a ranking member of the House Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Andy Pica?
Good afternoon. Yeah, this is Andy Pico coming back to PPACG for a brief visit. I represent House District 16, which is North Central Colorado Springs. And will be serving on the Transportation Local Affairs Committee and the Energy and Environment Committee.
Representative Terry Carver?
Thank you for doing this legislative roundtable. Always a good discussion. I represent Western El Paso County.
Senator Dennis Heisey?
Thank you, Jessica. I represent parts or all of all three counties that PPACG is in, plus a couple. And I am on the Transportation and Energy Committee as well as Finance.
Thank you. And Senator Pete Lee?
Hi, Jessica, and thanks for having this gathering. I'm Pete Lee, Senator, Senate District 11, Colorado Springs, Manitou Springs. I'm chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee and serve on the Finance Committee.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to hand it over to Shoshana Liu, our CDOT director, to give us a little bit of conversation.
And Jessica, my apologies for interrupting. This is Stan. I think we have just maybe some more introductions. We have our lobbyist, Lauren Furman, on the line, and also Mayor Val Carr. I'm not sure that you had an opportunity to introduce him. If you did, I missed it. My apologies.
I did miss it.
And that's Mayor Val Carr from Woodland Park.
And our new Transportation Commissioner is also here, Lisa Hickey, and I would love for her to introduce herself.
Well, I can go first if you want me to. Lisa Torman Hickey. I'm the new Transportation Commissioner for Region 2, and I'm sitting here in Colorado Springs, and I'm really excited to join and listen to this legislative roundtable to hear what your priorities are so I can best understand all of what we're thinking. Thank you very much.
And I will interrupt before we let Shoshana go. Senator Paul Lundeen has also just joined us. Senator, would you like to just give us a quick where you serve, and then we'll move on to Shoshana Liu. Or he might not be back here in audio yet, so we'll make him wait. Would you be willing to go ahead?
Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me and for taking a few minutes of this session to have a conversation about transportation. It's nice to see so many of you again and to meet some new faces, and I hope we'll be able to do it in person over some groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings when it gets warm out in the spring. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes today about some of the administration's legislative undertakings with respect to transportation, but just by way of very brief background for particularly for folks who are new, I want to kind of mention that over the last really 2 years, we have developed and begun to implement a new and I think very, very tight transportation plan that was developed in partnership with many of you and folks across the state, with the aim of making sure that we have sort of a clear way of prioritizing dollars as they come in, so that we can be really transparent to the public about where their dollars are going and make sure that we're preserving equity in terms of impacts across the state. So what that means is that as dollars come in through various sources, some of which we'll talk about a bit, they're all kind of going to the same North Star of executing that plan. And the priorities that we developed with so many of you for the Pikes Peak area really focused around those access issues to the military installations. We're really proud of how the project in and around Trevor is going. I'm really excited to see that piece of business get done. And we received a very generous federal grant because of our work together. And just yesterday, so it's good timing, our Transportation Commission in Lisa's first meeting took the really exciting step of approving moving forward with research powers. So we're just so thrilled that that was something we were able to pursue as part of the use of federal stimulus dollars, the largest project in that package by a long shot, and possible really only because our local partners came to the table and committed the local share to moving that forward now too. So we're so excited to finally see that priority, which we know is important to so many of you, get underway this spring. So that's the exciting news, but a bit of context for sort of how we're using transportation dollars to start with, what we're spending it on before we talk about the funding sources and some of the other aspects. Next slide, please. So the governor's budget this year, as many of you have probably seen, included a kind of standalone stimulus package focused on getting through the moment that we're in the economy. What the sort of theory of the case for this was that, in terms of how we dedicate dollars, particularly where we are able to restore some reductions based on changes in the economic forecast, they need to go really to places that get us the most bang for our buck in terms of the essential services across government, and then building back in a way that strengthens our economy and jobs and growth over the long term. So the idea was, don't just put the money back where it came from, but really make sure that we're investing these dollars intentionally and in ways that magnify in terms of the return on investment for people in our economy. One of the things that included is a focus on infrastructure, with $220 million total, of which 200 is for transportation infrastructure. The other 20 is for access to parks and wildlife resources in particular, given the increased traffic they've seen during the pandemic and keeping our economy vibrant. But the transportation component, next slide, please, is really focused on sort of two priorities. Again, both of these tie back to our planning exercise that we've gone through. I'll take the sort of second column first. Of these $200 million proposed as part of the transportation stimulus package, roughly 2/3 of that is intended to be focused on state of good repair and projects that really kind of make a dent in the decayed roads that we have across the state. Many of these in more rural corridors where there's just a deficit of decades on the basic state of repair on these roads. So, we kind of picked a range of rural roads, broken bridges in the Denver metro area, rehabilitating the Eisenhower Tunnel, which is unfortunately showing signs of its age and rapid speed. And we called out wildlife migration corridors, something where we're making some really exciting progress actually in I-25 South project, because of their sort of safety impact as well as the environmental consequence. And all of these projects are intended to come from the 10-year plan as a subset thereof. The other column is kind of an interesting innovation, and this ties to something that was said about the sort of focus on Main Street and small businesses. We've really come to appreciate during this pandemic just how integrated the transportation space in cities and towns is to the economy. And something that we found with a small program that we piloted is that making dollars available for communities to sort of think creatively about how to make their main streets safe and vibrant, it has a very sort of timely role in this crisis that we're in. And with the just $4 million that we've had available for small grants, we've seen something like 60 communities taking us up on these small grants that they've used for all sorts of things, really driven by the creativity of local governments to make Main Streets thrive through this pandemic. And we see a lot of promise to scale up this program. Specifically, we sort of ran a larger version of this program in the Denver area using a subset of the sort of Denver area's allocation from the 10-year plan. And We awarded so far $59 million in these projects, and we actually heard a lot from a number of PPACG communities about how they would like to be eligible for these kinds of funds, and we agree. So the idea would be that this standalone program and the stimulus would be a statewide version that builds on the learnings of these two programs that have been really vital through the COVID crisis. Next slide, please. In addition to state, the state side, federal relief can be an important asset to us during this time, as we've seen just in the last few weeks. Folks may have sort of a general sense of this already, but the $900 billion COVID relief package passed by Congress included $10 billion for surface transportation, $2 billion for airports and aviation and concessionaires, and $15 billion for mass transit that has not yet been distributed, but of which transit authorities across the state will receive some share. I think most of that will go to RTD, but there will be some amounts that get allocated to smaller transit authorities too, and we should know more soon. On the $10 billion that most directly flows through CDOT, that is what the Transportation Commission programmed yesterday. And what this shows, and we don't need to go into this in detail, but the federal statute used a formula that set a minimum for how much had to go to certain areas, including PPACG. We used a regional equity formula that we've used in the past to ensure that each part of the state got some of the benefit of these dollars. And the list that just got approved again included it as its largest project, the Research and Powers project for this area. So again, it's not, but by no means the only priority in our plan for the region, but we were really thrilled to be able to make a major down payment towards the region's priorities as part of this this tranche. And I will say that we appreciate everyone's patience, because we know that in the last tranche that we invested towards the plan, the Pikes Peak area did not get as much as some of the other regions. And part of what we were trying to do is make sure that we sort of steer the dial back towards that equity. So thank you to everyone for being patient, and this gets us much closer to where we should be in terms of regional equity. Next slide, please. What's next? Several things coming down the pike. The third tranche of certificates of participation, the debt that we are able to take out under Senate Bill 267, is on track for late spring. And this again will support more investments towards the 10-year plan. That should be about $500 million. We don't know the exact amount yet, and the Treasurer's Office is working with us to sort of identify the collateral that will underlie that debt. The stimulus proposal being taken up in the legislative session, again, continuing to execute the projects we have. And, I should mention that a large focus of ours has been to provide more transparency into projects, knowing that that's been an area of concern. So, making sure that we're, doing a much more granular level of reporting on how our projects are going to the public and to all of you. And then working towards a sustainable, forward-looking investment strategy, for the transportation sector as it evolves. And there are a lot of conversations right now that are just really taking shape about what this might look like in the legislative session. So I'm not sure I can share specifics, because they are not, it's not quite formed yet. But the conversations from last year that got kind of cut short by COVID about new revenue sources, is in the process of being picked back up. And I think there will be more to say on that in the weeks to come. And certainly we are hopeful that that there's a shot at that this year. Next slide, please. Just a word on some of the other priorities. This first item I would note, because it's of particular significance to some of the more remote rural areas, is increasing the public project statutory limit cap. CDOT is actually legally limited to spending $150,000 on in-house projects. So, a small road that can be paved by our own maintenance forces has to be limited in size by statute. And the rest we are actually required to bid out to contractors, which tends to work in many areas and particularly on larger projects. But we have a particular gap for small rural projects, particularly those in remote areas. So we would like to kind of modernize this cap, particularly to be able to do more small pieces of business in-house to support rural communities. More flexibility in managing IT projects within CDOT. And then budget reports to DPA and state controller. This is one that Senator Lundin and some others know well. This was sort of the last order of business on our response to an audit that we received a couple of years ago. And it's kind of a cleanup piece of legislation that we worked through with the auditor and the audit committee to be able to kind of reconcile some of the practices with respect to how we report and provide, again, transparency and accountability to the public. Other things we've talked about, the transportation fees, obviously the big ticket if that happens. There are, there are a number of discussions about sort of environmental aspects that are sort of taking shape that may have an overlap with transportation. Not quite sure how those will settle yet. And then, obviously continuing the Senate Bill 267 funding, doesn't require specific legislative action right now, but is sort of on the implementation stage. Next slide, please. All right. And I stayed within my 10 minutes, Andy. Do we have a moment for questions or?
Sure.
Well, this is Commissioner Stan with a comment. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Transportation Commission and to our new Transportation Commissioner and to Director Liu for succeeding in voting in favor of the funding for the Research Powers Interchange. As you all know, that's our #1 priority and a big expensive project. And it feels to me like we just, because of the other funds that were made available, we were able to walk into an opportunity here to not lose that project, which would have happened otherwise. And I think that's just very, very important. So that's great news that you just mentioned to us, Shoshana. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate our new Transportation Commissioner. I don't know, but I'm going to assume you voted in favor of that. And
yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there were questions. It was a fast moving, lots of activity, really expert work by CDOT. And there are important questions raised about it, but we are excited for that project to move forward.
Great. Thank you. And then to our legislators, not necessarily directed specifically to transportation infrastructure, but it was on Director Liu's first chart. And that was a large sum of money that's going towards helping people in need because of coronavirus challenges. I just would ask our legislators to think very deeply about, are there any ways some of those funds could be directed towards getting people back to work? I did mention it earlier, but that would really be helpful for all of us because the more people we put back to work, the more tax revenue the state and local governments is going to have, the healthier our communities will be. For many people, work is their source of pride. So it's healthy for citizens, but also there, if I understand correctly, there is a gigantic looming unemployment bill that the state has to worry about. I could be wrong with that, but I think that's true. And the sooner we can work away from those unemployment payments and get people into jobs, the healthier we will all be everywhere. So to our legislators, if you can find opportunities to push that money towards projects, either in workforce centers or in something else that helps people get back to work, that would be deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Commissioner Vanderwerf, this is Senator Lundin. Most of my friends call me Paul. I will waive the licensing fee for your use of my talking points.
Sorry about that. Excellent, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Call me Paul.
Well,
okay,
and
Paul.
I'm going to chime in real quick. So Senator Lundin, you really did just pop in at the perfect time. Our next step is we're going to call on each legislator and we're just going to ask, hey, can you give us a few quick points on the bills you're planning on doing or your priorities for this upcoming legislative session? We're going to try to keep those under 5 minutes. So if you see me start to do the I'll be very subtle. You'll never know it was me. But we would like to ask Senator Lundin, would you kick us off? You missed the chance to tell us what part of the region you serve. So if you'll start with that and then talk a little bit about your bills and priorities. And if anybody has comments or questions, they're afraid of forgetting what they are, put them in the chat and we'll make sure to give everybody time just to ask those and follow up and, talk a little more.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jessica, and all the members of the commission that have pulled this together. Lauren, good to see you as always. I guess I would kind of jump off from where Commissioner Vanderwerf was speaking. I think a lot of the legislative activity that I will be engaging with will have to do with trying to get our economy back up and moving, putting people back into meaningful work everywhere we possibly can. There have been, and there were in the special session, efforts by government to provide a trickling of dollars to businesses, hoping that we could keep them alive. I will, of course, be fighting to relieve some of the pressure that has been on businesses as we work our way into a better understanding of this virus, how to defeat it by a better management of the people at risk. And at the same time, the vaccines are coming online, et cetera. We truly are. And I see if there's been some political talk about a very dark winter, I perhaps can see further than the average bear with my better than 20/20 vision. And I can see a bright spring coming. And I'm looking forward to that and hoping that, in fact, we can get in spring and summer businesses back to work. Having said that, as a general theme for many things I'll be working on, I do have some specific legislation I will be working on. I will continue to fight to improve the privacy that we each believe we have. And in this world of digital engagement, so many of us don't realize how much of our privacy is slipping away. So I will be working with a team. Representative Carver was a House sponsor on this bill in the last session. I believe she will be joining us again on that. So a shout out to Terry Carver for her participation in a data privacy bill. I will also be leaning hard into the fact that we spend about $13 billion a year from all sources in public education in Colorado. And when we listen to the people we're serving, we serve them better. And many parents, when confronted with this pandemic, when they did not want their child to slide further behind, or they wanted their student to keep up as best they could, they found alternative and different and sometimes unusual methods of helping their child continue to advance their learning opportunities and their education. I'll be bringing a bill that would give all students and all parents and all families, not just the affluent families who are good at advocating on their own behalf and have the means to provide alternatives, but I want to make sure that all students, especially the students who might be most economically at risk or academically at risk, that they have opportunities to, in fact, regain some of the ground they might have lost during the pandemic. So we'll be leaning into public education and making sure that we are supporting the clever ideas and that parents have come up with to help move their children forward. I'll pause there. I'll just pause there because I have other things, but I think those are the most pressing issues that I'll be working on. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Northwest El Paso County, Northwest Colorado Springs. I live in Monument. I work on behalf of all of the people of Colorado, but I am a vigorous and sometimes accused to be parochial partisan when it comes to making sure that Southern Colorado and El Paso County are in fact identified as the ethos that is that which is best of Colorado.
Thank you very much, Senator. I'm going to ask Senator Pete Lee to go next if there aren't any questions for Senator Lundeen. Okay.
Well, I share Senator Lundeen's vision for the future in the spring. I'm optimistic that we are going to get this COVID vaccine ramped up and start to improve the health of our community. I also look forward to any measures which we can support to assist the business community to get back to work, to do what they do best. I was worked with the chamber here to try to get that 5-star program ramped up to help our local businesses open up and get back to work. That said, specifically, I'm as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, will be working on criminal juvenile justice reform bills. I've got a half a dozen bills in the hopper, one of which is working with local Sheriff Bill Elder on jail depopulation. I don't know if you know it, but Sheriff Elder has done an extraordinary job during this 6-8 month period of managing the jail so that fewer people are exposed to keep our community safe while reducing the number of people in the jail. I'm also working with called
We may have lost Senator Lee. The risk of doing a
sorry about that. Did I disappear and reappear?
You did.
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, I'm working with some community stakeholders to improve outcomes for people coming out of the Department of Corrections. As you may or may not be aware, Colorado spends $1 billion, that's $1 billion with a B, dollars on the Department of Corrections, but half of the people that get out of the Department of Corrections go right back within 3 years. So we're going to be looking at some measures to improve the outcomes for people coming out of the Department of Corrections. I'm also going to take a look at what's known in Colorado law as felony murder. People who did not commit the crime and were unrelated to the crime, the possibility of parole if someone died, even if they had nothing to do with that death. It's an antiquated measure that's been in the law since medieval times around the country and around the world, and a lot of states are changing it to be consistent with our principles of holding people accountable for the things they've actually done. That and a number of juvenile justice measures that I'm working on to try to divert kids from the criminal justice system into more effective programs for restorative justice. What we know is the more time kids spend in the juvenile justice system, the more likely they are to have bad outcomes, quit school, have bad mental health, and get into the criminal justice system. So effective diversion and resources to divert kids out of the juvenile system into community-based programs. So that's a couple of things that I'll be working on. I'm also going to be working with Senator Gardner and Rep. Carver on electronic wills, and I'll let Representative Carver describe that esoteric concept. But it's basically to enable people who are elderly and want a will in this isolated time to be able to do those things electronically. So again, responding to COVID and issues related to that. So there you go, a little overview.
Thank you, Senator. Does anyone have any questions for Senator Lee?
And this is Commissioner Stan. I've got a comment. And first of all, Senator, I'd like to thank you for your support of small businesses. It sounds to me like between that and maybe helping people get back to work, there might be some potential partnerships between you, Senator Lee, and Senator Lundeen to help us get our economy back into place. That would be awesome to see that partnership grow to deal with getting us out of the issues that have been generated from COVID. And with regard to some of the criminal justice reform that you're working on, I'd say the very first one you mentioned is something of great interest to me, and that's helping people once they've served their time to figure out how to become productive and healthy members of our society. You might be well aware, Senator, of our El Paso County CJCC board, Criminal Justice coordinating council where we have a lot of nonprofits and public agencies working together to try to provide those kinds of solutions. If at a later time, if you don't know that much about that group, it would be appropriate for us to maybe brief you up on what's going on within that. There's a main board and then several sub boards. A lot of people are involved in it. It's been running for 3 years now. Also just want to, I think we got our, by the way, I want to mention that Sheriff Elder has done a fantastic job. He often doesn't get the credit for the huge amount of work that he's done to keep our prisoners safe. Even though we ended up with an outbreak that was pretty substantial, he was able to keep that from happening for a really long time before it finally did happen. He's done a lot of great work. And one of the great things I think they're doing, it's kind of related to mental health, are the Beacon behavioral units that El Paso County has and will be doing too. We're doing that off of a grant program, and we'll be interested in institutionalizing that with funding someday. And it is of such, it seems to have such a measure of success that I believe the city of Fountain is considering a Beacon unit. And I think there are other public agencies that are also public municipalities that are considering that as well. So there might be a real strategy engagement there with regard to the state dealing with mental health issues and dealing with incarceration challenges that come to people that have mental health challenges as well. Thank you, Senator.
Are there any other questions or comments for the senator?
Yeah, this is Representative Sanders. Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to praise some of the legislation that Senator Lee is bringing forward. As a conservative here, I just hate bloated, expensive government programs that waste taxpayers' money. We spend $1 trillion on our correction system a year, and a lot of the programs show very little bang for the buck. More or less, we're throwing away the taxpayers' money. There's so much room for improvement to refine these programs, and save the taxpayers' money. And I think that's some of what Senator Pete Lee is doing. $1 trillion is a lot of money. We can refine that program, refine all these programs, make them more effective, and actually use some of that savings maybe on education and transportation. So I think everybody should keep a close eye on this legislation, because we can really be saving some money and have corrections be more efficient. So I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're out of time temporarily for Senator Lee. So I'm gonna call on Representative Terry Carver, if you'd talk to us for a few moments.
Well, I'll be part of a bill that continues my focus on wildfire mitigation. And this also addresses healthy forest management, which is a core area in how we reduce wildfire risk, as far as reducing some of the dead tree kill that is the source fuel for these catastrophic fires, especially the fires that we saw in 2020. So there will be that bill. I am on judiciary, and then I am also on business affairs. So there are a number of bills that will deal with some of our out-of-date statutes as far as criminal offenses, in particular sexual exploitation of children, the use of strangulation and domestic violence. We've had some developments where we need some adjustments in statute, as well as additional victims assistance in that area. Talking with a number of small businesses and associations on some potential legislation to help in that area, as well as workforce development. And then with regards to, want to do a call out to the Area Agency on Aging and some of the important conversations we've had in the last 6 months on the challenges for our seniors in senior living centers and their isolation and the difficulty in trying to deal with that and the real suffering that is going on by our seniors from the extreme isolation. So those are a number of areas where I'll be active in legislation in 2021.
Yeah, this is Dick Elsner. I would like to add one thing. When you talk about wildfire mitigation, before the pandemic, I had just started a conversation with AG Weiser about, in the Front Range and Park County in particular, along the whole Front Range in general, there are a lot of ponds that are no longer legal. They were legacy. They've been there a long time. And now the requirement on many of these is that they be breached and drained. The issue we have is a lot of those ponds are used for firefighting. They aren't used for forest fires because there's not enough water in the pond for forest fires, but they're used for the tree on fire, house on fire, things that could quickly move into the forest around the areas that are close to the Front Range. And as you saw in Fort Collins, you get a good fire going, and it can almost burn into a city. The Hayman almost made it into some areas of Douglas County that were highly populated, and we would use, in any wildfire mitigation, I would really like some assistance to try to figure out a way that we could preserve some of these ponds so we can put the fires out before they get big. Thank you.
Dick, let's plan on having a conversation offline, and
that'd be great.
Be glad to work on that. And
thank you very much.
I'll put my cell phone number in the chat and we'll connect.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments for Representative Carver? Terry, thank you so much. I'm going to ask Senator Heisey to go next then.
You.
Once he remembers to unmute.
It was less remembering than remembering how. Thanks, Jessica. A few things. I am on an audiology compact geared towards military spouses. So this is nothing new for this region, but it's one more area where we need to allow folks that are transferred in for them with skills to be able to start work immediately without having to go through all the state licensing hoops, and then they'll have time to get their Colorado license. So nothing new, just one more professional skill set that has come to our attention that needs a little help. I also have been working with the Rural Electric Association on fire mitigation in their right-of-ways. Right now, there is no requirement that they have a mitigation plan, and so we're putting together something that will require them to have a mitigation plan and file that with the state. They're of course more than willing to participate in this because they recognize that if one of their lines starts a fire, it would bankrupt any REA in the state. There's not one out there that can handle the cost of the major fire. For Teller County, Rep. Baisley and I are carrying a bill to allow a representative on the Gambling Commission Board from one of the counties that has gambling in the county, so it'd be Teller or Gilpin. Currently, they are prohibited from serving on that board. So somehow that just doesn't seem quite right that the county most impacted would not have the ability to have a voice. Going to be doing a little on energy, some battery storage, but that's probably the bulk of what this board might be interested in.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Senator Heisey?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if it's for Senator Heisey. Oh.
They are not asking for the governor's veto to be extended.
Jessica, can I go ahead?
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm not sure if this is for Senator Heisey or if it's going to be for Representative Bradfield. And so either we can wait till we get to her, but is anybody going to be carrying a PFAS bill?
I would hope not. Those tend to spiral out of control on us.
Right.
And I really do kind of believe that that for the security Whitefield Fountain area, we have that PFAS as under control as you can, based on the compounded stuff.
Okay, thank you.
I have no intentions of running anything. I think the science needs to catch up with the wastewater situation with PFAS. And I think it's way too early to suggest any legislation just because.
Yeah, we would, if you hear of anything, we would just really like to get on in the beginning of it rather than after when it's already completely written. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Senator Heisey. I'm going to ask Representative Andy Pico to go next, and then I'm going to ask Representative Sandridge to go after him.
Hi, I'm just getting started, of course, with a lot of stuff, being one of the new kids on the block. I do have a couple of different bills in that are presently being worked, and be trying to get some support lined up for them as I go forth. One of them will be to push some of the authority down to the county commissioners on the different health orders that are issued. Right now, CDPACG puts them out, and then the county boards, the county health departments, put them out, and the local elected officials are kind of left out of the loop. And that was one of the things that bothered me when I was on the council, is we would occasionally get an update, but not really included within the conversation. So I have that one is in the works. I have another one that would try to have the legislature be involved in the governor extending orders, emergency orders past 60 days. I'm writing that one to be a little bit more general than just the health situation is now, but as a general rule, to have the legislature involved much more than they are at present. At the moment, the legislature can get together and end a state of emergency. Not that I doubt that the legislature would, but at this point, the governor can declare an additional 30 days and just keep rolling that over. And I think the legislature needs to be involved in that. On some of the other bills that I'm considering at this point, I got about 6 ideas, working with various groups of people, and 2 slots left in what I can submit. So I'm still working through some of those. But my focus is on getting our businesses back to work, try to ensure that we can reduce that unemployment, as Senator Landine was talking about a few minutes ago. Try to get our people back to work. Also looking in the energy sector to try to protect the energy sector and expand options. One of the ideas that one of the other representatives is brought up is an expansion of some of the green energy options that are available to different utility companies. And I think it's a pretty good idea as it was originally presented to me, and we'll see how that goes. But those are some of the things I'm working on right now. Any
Does anyone
questions?
have any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Stana. Just thank you, Representative Pico, and congratulations. On your first item about, I think in the general sense, I think it fits very well into PPACG legislative priorities, which is supporting local control. And maybe for the benefit of everybody here, us county commissioners would often find out about a new public health order when it was published in the press. That's when we would find out about it. It's a difficult situation. It's hard on everybody. But there's not been a lot that we've been able to do locally. We've really been just responding to state initiatives more than anything else. And I do believe that every local community has a great understanding about what can work well or not work well in their community. And I think we've lost out on some opportunities for some local engagement that ultimately could have been, from a strategic point of view, very helpful across the state of Colorado. So Representative Pico, I look forward to working with you on that legislation, and I'll probably give you a call later about it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. That was one of my pet peeves too, is finding out about things, reading it in the newspaper rather than hearing through the channels that are supposed to work. And that's not limited to just this sort of thing. That's all the stuff. I'm finding out a lot more about our legislative schedule by reading the paper than I am hearing from the leadership at up in the Capitol. And I see a few other head nods going on out there. So that is kind of one of those pet peeves. It'd be nice to be included in something.
It's none of your business, Andy.
No comment.
Okay, then I'll ask Representative Shane Sandridge, would you speak to us for a little bit about your priorities and plans?
Great. Thanks again. Well, the last emergency session we had actually a couple weeks ago, I was proud to be part of one of the 4 prime sponsors on a $37 million package to help small businesses. What it mostly did was it focused on businesses that were hurting the most, industries hurting the most. What we did is, how I looked at this is a lot of these industries right now that are hurting historically have put hundreds of millions to billions of dollars worth of tax revenue given to our state. So they've really lined the pockets of our state historically. Now they're hurting, and we're just returning a few dollars back. So a lot of people say these bills are handouts to certain industries. Well, they're not. We're returning just a small portion of the massive amount of revenue they've generated through taxes for the state. So we'll continue to look at different packages to help businesses. Obviously, nothing's going to be a cure until we reopen up the state. That's going to be the cure. So we have to reevaluate those policies. As for specific bills for the future, we have to continue to keep our area attractive to the military. I've drafted a bill to help strengthen the homestead tax exemption for our disabled vets. We're really lagging behind compared to other states of making that exemption attractive. So I'm going to do that. Also, education funding. Education funding is very important for our military when they're looking to expand or stay in our area. I ran amendments last year, or the last long budget, which is our state budget, to increase funding or to try to stop the decrease of education funding. I'll continue to try to get as much funding as we can for education and keep our area as attractive as can be for the military. So I think that's it. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Representative Sandridge. I'm going to ask Representative Mark Baisley to speak next, please.
Thank you, Jessica. So I've got, I have a bill that's going to recognize a new form of business structure. So we're all familiar with corporations and S corporations and LLCs, or limited liability corporations and companies and partnerships and so on. There's another one that floats around the US called the Uniform Protected Series. And that is a way for companies to have one parent company and many smaller companies underneath them. That's for the sake of liability. So I'll tell you someone who, for instance, would take advantage of this if we had it in Colorado would be Senator Rob Woodward, who has, he owns 30 Subway sandwich shops, and he would love to have a Uniform Protected Series Act where he has the parent company, and then each of those shops would be a separate entity underneath that parent. And then he can file everything tax-wise all at once, but the liability could be separated. So if someone slip and falls in one store, they can't sue the entire chain, just that one store. So anyway, that happens in several other states. I proposed it last year as that we bring that into Colorado. I got a lot of pushback from the Bar Association, but the Bar Association did approach me this time and said, hey, well, one thing that we do need to do is we need to recognize those entities that do business in Colorado. So there could be a company that's headquartered in Illinois, where they do have the Uniform Protected Series Act, and they have one of their companies reaches out and does business in Colorado, and we don't know how to interact with them tax-wise and so on. It's just not recognized. So I'm carrying a bill that's in cooperation with the Bar Association that I was doing battle with last time, and this time we're partnering, and so we will recognize just those entities. It's called the Foreign Protected Series. Anyway, kind of boring tax stuff, but that's one item. Another one, an education bill that I'm carrying that will give tax credits for folks, especially now during COVID, tax credits for people who are doing homeschooling or private schooling, timely, I think. Then working with the gaming folks, since Cripple Creek is in my district in Teller County. We need to do, it's another boring tax thing, but has to do with the sports betting, since that's new. We need to make an adjustment with how that tax is calculated, because everything gets thrown into a single bucket. And so Cripple Creek's is mixed in with Central City and Blackhawks, which up in Gilpin County, and they need to be able to separate that out. So it's just a local concern. Then one that, well, I'll finish on the high note here. There's a campaign disclaimer laws. I want to align our campaign disclaimer laws, meaning where in Colorado, you have to put your disclaimer on a sign or whatever that says, vote for Dennis Heisey for state Senate. And the disclaimer that says paid for by Heisey for Senate has to be, that disclaimer has to be no less than 15% of the largest type on the sign, which it can be really huge because of that. Anyway, there's a lot of silliness, but that we do in the state, and the federal government rules are a lot better. And so I just want to align state rules with federal rules, and also to put some guardrails around the whistleblowers, because whistleblowers use these disclaimer laws to beat up other campaigns, opposition campaigns, by using the leverage or the big hammer of the Secretary of State. And I think we need to disallow that. That's gotten way out of hand in some cases. Let's see, I've got just this one more, and that's the high note here. A bill that I ran last time that got truncated along with all the COVID truncation of the session, and that's the 811 locate exemption for county roads. So we all have to call before we dig. And that applies to counties as well. And when counties go to smooth out dirt roads that have become washboarded because of snow runoff and so on, they have to call 811 and locate. Well, that can back up quite a ways when the snow is melting and 60 counties are calling and saying, come out here and locate the utilities so that I can smooth out the roads. Well, the counties know exactly where those utilities are because they've been smoothing out those roads for decades. And so we had this all worked out and it looked like it was going to pass. And I'm going to run that again so that counties can simply manage their roads like they ought to be allowed to do.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Mark for doing that. We've got somewhere around 1,500 miles of dirt roads in Park County, and we try to grade all of them at least once every year. And having to go through, locate on 1,500 miles of roads every year when, yes, the lines did not move from the previous year. We know where they are. It wastes a lot of time, and it really does slow down our efforts. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, sir. I think we'll get it through this time, Dick.
Good.
And this is Commissioner Stan for Representative Baisley. I find that uniform protective series concept very interesting. If I understand correctly, that really is a process to reduce a administrative burden that's coming from a statute that probably has, I can't think of a downside to it. So to me, that does seem to fit within a PPACG priority. It might not be a legislative priority about reducing redundant or unnecessary regulations. It's not necessarily down a lane per se for what we work on, but on the reducing of legislative burden, that sounds like it would help to achieve one little piece of that. So do I understand that correctly, Representative Baisley?
Yes, Commissioner. But this year, I'm not going to be able to get away with that. This is a foot in the door now. Now that the Bar Association is playing nice because the attention got raised last year in the 2020 session when I was trying to develop or recognize the Uniform Protected Series companies in Colorado, and that got killed through that special interest group of the attorneys. It was sort of like we didn't think of it, so we're going to squash it. They said we have some other ideas of how we might go about that. But then, since that did raise the attention to the Uniform Protected Series companies that are headquartered in other states but doing business here locally, they said, yeah, you know what, we kind of have to recognize them, at least the ones that come from out of state. So let's do that at least. So now that the door is open for conversation. So what I anticipate is that next year in the 2022 session, I'll be able to reintroduce, and hopefully with some cooperation and some better understanding with the Bar Association, a Uniform Protected Series Act, flexibility for companies. So yeah, it's you can do it now. Obviously, you can create an LLC and under that have corporations and vice versa and all that. But the Uniform Protected Series Act that's been developed and matured in other states, that really reduces paperwork for companies for tax filing and so on, and really gives them the separation of liabilities that they really ought to be able to do. So it's just good flexibility in us, and it creates a better environment for people to do business in Colorado, companies.
Thank you. I don't mean to speak for Sharon Thompson, but she has a question for you also, Representative Baisley, that she put in chat. Would that grading also apply to cities?
Yes, it applies to anyone. But you know what? I'm going to go make sure that is true. I do believe that is the case. I don't think it's specific to counties, but that's a wonderful question. Let me go make sure of it, because we're still, I think, early enough. Yeah, we are. We're early enough to where I can make sure that cities are covered as well. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Appreciate it, Sharon.
So I'm going to say thank you. Representative Mary Bradfield, would you talk to us a little bit about your priorities.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. One of the bills I'm putting forth is to grant immunity to small businesses or really any entity from lawsuits due to COVID. And I think that's all I'm going to say about that. It's probably going to get some kickback or some opposition from lawyers, but we'll deal with that if we need to. Another bill I am putting forth is in regards to our military veterans. There was in 2018, a bill was passed to have a reduction in their state income tax. And it was a progressively getting larger every year. But that bill had a sunset of 2022. And I want to extend that bill out to 2034 and then cap it at 20,000 at this time when the state is in a better financial state. In the future, I would like to raise that dollar amount, but I need to keep it. I feel we need to keep it at a reasonable amount right now. I am also co-authoring a bill with Representative Tim Geithner. This is an education bill, and it has to do with virtual learning and to set some guidelines for school districts as to what is the proper protocol and parental guidelines and staff guidelines as what is appropriate and what is not. And so we'll see how that is. And those are the three that I'm working on right now. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Representative Bradfield? Okay, that is everybody I've got on my list for the senators and representatives. Did I miss or skip anyone? If so, I'm really, 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 really sorry, but let me know. Okay, then I will hand us back over to our wonderful chairwoman to kind of wrap us up. But if anybody does have anything that they didn't get the chance to say to our representatives or to each other, chime in.
Happy New Year. This is Lundeen. Let's all hope fervently that 2021 is a little bit better than 2020.
That's all we can hope for.
Amen.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you to all our senators and representatives for taking the time to be here with us. We know this is a very, very busy time for you, and it means a lot that you took this time to join us and to share your priorities with us. We are always here to share our priorities or update you on issues. So please know we are here for you, and we are grateful for your service to our great state of Colorado. And everybody stay safe and everybody stay healthy. And I am thankful for all of you. So are there any more questions, any further comments before we adjourn? Only 3 minutes over. So thank you to all of you.
We do have a quick comment in the chat. We really quick rushed through introducing Lauren Furman, who's the PPACG lobbyist. But for all of our wonderful representatives and board members, if you haven't had the chance to chat with her yet, we hope you'll all take that time and enjoy working with her because she's pretty wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you, Lauren. Do you have any comments you'd like to make before we adjourn?
No, I just appreciate the time. This is super helpful. And I think, I hope it's helpful for the senators and the representatives. You know, PPACG wants to be a partner with you as you get into the legislative session twice, once in January and once in February, and for who knows how long. But we're here for you to help you and however we can. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate those words. Okay, well, if no one has any further comments, I want to thank Jessica for really kind of organizing this and handling coordination today. It's much appreciated, and you called me wonderful, so I greatly appreciate that too. And a happy New Year to everyone, and go do good. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Senator
New Year.
Bailey, I hope
Thank you,
Representative
everybody.
Happy New
Bailey
Year.
is out of the garage. My goodness, he's been in the garage this whole time. Isn't it kind of cold out there?
I did wonder about that.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
No, this is portion of my man cave. That's where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah. You even have them labeled. Look at that. Labels on them. Okay.
It's probably booze.
I'll give you the tour next time.
Yeah, I don't think I want to know the labels. One that says arm parts, another says hand parts or something.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.